Welcome to the Simple Life podcast, where I take complex health and fitness ideas and break them down into bite-sized, actionable behaviors to simplify your routine so that you can reap the rewards and live a healthy and fulfilled life. I'll also be talking to experts on various topics to broaden your horizons and make sure that you are up to date and across all of the ways that you can improve your fitness, nutrition, and stress management practices. Let's get into it. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 2 of the client series, where I'm interviewing clients and getting a deeper understanding of their journey. In particular, I'm across their journey, but I want to share it with you guys because I think it's so inspiring to hear people just like yourselves with the similar challenges that we all face in this busy world as parents, and how different people are able to navigate different challenges to see really positive benefits from both nutrition and exercise. And in particular today, you gain a deeper understanding of Kara's journey through chronic fatigue and an early love of fitness that was actually turned off, and then sort of now re-established as something that she does in her life for fun. And in particular, we also discuss her astonishing weight loss results over the past 15 months, where it's totaled just over 15 kilos. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, here's Kara Wymond. All right, Kara, welcome to the client series of The Simple Life.
Hey Ben.
So, before we get stuck into it, I just want to give everyone a little bit of a quick backstory on, I guess, how we met, how long you've been training with us.
Yeah.
Did you start training with us at Pride, or was that in the park with Kat? I actually can't remember.
No, it was at Pride with Kat. That was when I first started training with you. And I think from memory, it was the time Lucy was there as well.
Yeah, so that would have been the year prior to the end of 2014. So how long were you training at Pride?
I think probably like a year, maybe.
A year, maybe, and then out into the park. And then,
yeah.
Did you start training with us when we first moved indoors? Or there's a little period of not?
Yes. Oh no, I was in like the bowls club or something with you for a while.
Yeah.
I remember
Bowls
that.
club.
And there's a few people I think that I recognize now that would have been back then as well. Had a bit of time in the bowls club.
And then I'm just trying to think, Zoe's now just turned 6. So that would have put her at 2017. She was born.
Yeah. So I think she started coming along with me to BD maybe when she was about, I don't know, maybe 12 months old.
Okay. Because I reckon you came indoors when we started BD with Zoe, and I reckon you were pregnant when we opened and wasn't training for that stage.
Yeah. Taking it easy.
So basically now, probably just gone 10 years, actually, that we've known each other.
How cool is that?
It's actually crazy when you think about
it. I
it.
know. Does that mean you were like 15 back then?
No, so I started at Pride just after I turned 21. So that must have been 9 years. Actually, it's just on nine years.
Wow, that's crazy.
Crazy. So not 10 years, actually 9 years. There we go.
I guess I must have been like maybe 26. I can't even calculate backwards, but that's a long time. We are
ages
grown ups now.
I know. So let's take it all the way back. So we've spoken about this before, but what was your childhood and teenage years like in regards to activity and fitness? Was it something that you focused on, prioritized, or just a part of life?
Yeah, I think it was just a part of life for me. And funnily, I think we've talked about this a bit. I've never really been a team sports person. I've always been one to get involved in individual sports. So I was like a long distance runner because I enjoyed it. Yeah, I know. It's just something I loved, like running around the paddocks and the farm for fun.
Which, considering how much of a people person you are, it's a bit weird that you didn't really get into team sports. But
yeah, I know. Well, yeah, maybe it was too far on the bus or something from the country town.
Mate.
Um, yeah, and horse riding. So that was like my two main sports growing up that I used to do, and I loved it. And yeah, I think we've talked about this as well. Funnily, I loved fitness so much that my school actually, when I was Bentry Gully Gangster College, they dropped year 12 PE. So I dropped out of school because they dropped year 12 PE. And I then went on to study PE at TAFE and became a personal trainer all the way back then. Then realized pretty quickly that being in a gym wasn't for me. So, yeah.
So for someone who loved, and that, I mean, that's a pretty familiar story for all PTs, which maybe for most industries it would also relate, but for a lot of jobs, I don't, like just because you love maths doesn't mean you'll work in finance, right? Even though I'm sure it
Yeah.
lines up for a lot of people, but what was it about working in a gym that, or being a PT that you thought, oh no, not for me?
We're going to have to cut Pablo out. Should I go and look him away?
Ah, he's all right. He's okay. Yeah.
What was it about working in a gym that didn't do it for me?
Yeah.
Well, it was probably the one that I was working in at the time. It was a bodybuilding gym in Bayswater called Spartans, and the lady was really mean, and she just got me wiping plants, and so that was probably what stopped me from enjoying it.
So did you ever coach clients?
Yeah, I took a couple of like group fitness classes, and
Yeah.
I loved that. I thought that was really fun, but yeah, no, it didn't really last long at all for me. It kind of was one of those things where I was just went in and went, nah, this is not for me.
Oh, that's a bit of a bummer.
I know. I probably would have loved it.
Yeah. I mean, knowing you now, I would agree. I think you'd
Yeah.
be a killer at it.
Yeah.
So moving into early 20s, left the gym. What did you do from there?
I rolled from my gym fitness course. I was working a retail job part-time and they offered me a manager role. So off I went to be the manager of, this is hilarious, Westco Jeans in St Kilda.
West
And
Jeans. Okay.
yeah, there I was at 17 years old catching the tram out to Westco Jeans to be the manager on Ackland Street.
Nice.
So random of like a kickoff of work, but after that I ended up rolling into a corporate role which suited me a bit better.
Yep. Now, as you left the gym, were you still, a member somewhere, still being active? Like, was it always a part of your life?
Yeah, I think like it kind of came in and out, like trying to fit it in amongst, I think that was something that trying to fit it in amongst life started getting tricky.
Yeah.
Um, I was a member of the King Club in Wantirna and they ran awesome boxing classes and they were always really fun. So that was something that I kept up. But yeah, I think also didn't really get that heavily into it and start until I started joining some corporate games type things and doing swimming and, runs around Albert Park Lake for fun at lunchtime.
Yep.
That's kind of where it sat for a while.
Yeah. So never really lost touch, but I don't think you'd be the first person in the early 20s to perhaps prioritize other things apart from your own
Yes.
health.
Yes, I think I started prioritizing the disco parties.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Working and having fun.
And when do you think it sort of became clear that it's like, actually, this is something that I should probably put more attention into?
I think, well, like, gosh, if I'm being honest, probably not until I had kids where I realized it was important to put attention into it. I
Yeah.
think it was still up until even before then, I was doing it just for fun because I loved it.
I mean, that's as good a reason as any.
Yeah, it was
And
always for fun. But then I realized, you kind of have to do it. It's also something that's really important for you physically and mentally. And you
yeah,
can't, it's as important as brushing your teeth.
yes, I
Yeah.
like that analogy.
Yeah.
What was one of the biggest lessons that you learned early days about fitness? Like, and it doesn't even have to be, like either mindset wise or realizing how important it is, but was there like a tactical lesson or programming lesson that you learned early days that has kind of stuck? with you until now?
Um, yeah, I don't know about like early days. It was always just about fun back then. But I think like most recently, when I've been taking it a bit more seriously and have just been a bit more consistent, I would say that the big difference has been a bit of a shift in my why.
Yeah.
So, back in the day, it was just for fun. And my why now is because I know how important it is to, maintain my health, really.
Yeah. And I think as you get older a little bit as well, and you'd be able to speak to this, but like stuff, you're quite robust when you're young. Like I say
Mm,
to everyone, it's
yeah.
like late teens, early 20s, you're almost like an elastic band. Like you get stretch, and a snap,
Yeah.
and then you just bounce straight back to
Yeah.
normal. Whereas when stuff starts to break a little bit, and then it just sort of highlights potentially all the little things that you're doing wrong, or
Mm,
all the little things that you could be doing a little bit better.
yeah.
And it becomes so much easier to tweak that stuff when you're already in a good routine.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
if you're having to start something new, then it becomes an entirely new challenge.
Yeah. Well, that's definitely something I experienced, postpartum with Leo as well. Like, gosh, how hard that was to get fit again. That, it wasn't hard, but it was just such a big, it was way harder than it is now. It's just so easy to roll up to gym and I feel fit.
Yeah.
But that beginning is tough work.
Yeah, for sure. So Zoe was born in 2017,
Yep.
and then Leo's now, has he one or coming up to one?
One and a
Close.
half, I think, nearly one and a
One
half.
and a half. There you go.
Yeah.
That's how well I'm going off. I'm so terrible with toddlers' ages. I lose track
I
so
know.
much.
Yeah.
I'm like, actually, he would be 1.5 because he's now charging around the gym.
He's
Um,
fast.
did you find a difference between those two training post natal? Like, was there a challenge with one and potentially not with the other?
Yeah, absolutely. Huge difference. So I think one of the huge differences was probably just being a first time parent and trying to go gangbusters back into everything at full speed. So I went back to work with Zoe at 10 months old, um, straight back into a really big role. I went in really hard, tried to keep up all the social stuff. And
Mm,
I think I pretty much just cooked myself and ended up, yeah, not functioning very well. And
yeah.
I'm not sure if you remember, but literally being so exhausted, I like
No,
turned
I
up
do
and
remember.
cried one day.
Oh, did you cry on us? Did you?
Yeah, I like cried on the rower because I was so exhausted and fatigued, and I was like, why isn't this working? Like, why can't
Yeah.
I do life?
Yeah, that's right. You're not the only person to cry on me at the gym. It's not, I mean,
Yeah,
it's always a bigger deal to you guys than it is to
yeah,
us.
yeah,
It happens. It's like when you're so emotionally drained, all it takes is
yeah,
a little bit of intensity and it just comes out. It's
yeah,
not a problem.
yeah, yeah.
I'm sure there's
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a few people listening to this being like, oh yeah, I've cried at the gym too.
I've had a teary. Yep,
I've
we've
had a
all been
tear.
there.
Oh,
Yep.
absolutely. And first time parents 100% is because you are just literally analyzing everything and
Yep.
trying to do everything and figure out a new normal and
Yes.
figure out what's real, what deserves my attention, what's not.
Yes.
And speaking of you being tired, like you had chronic fatigue as
Yeah.
well, which
Well,
is
I
significant.
think
Was that was right around that time, right, when you got diagnosed
yeah,
with
I
that?
think that was actually, probably the from the trying to do all the things and then not knowing myself well enough to, say yes to the right things and no to the wrong things and trying to do it all. Yeah, I ended up with chronic fatigue. I'm still not sure really how it came about, other than that, maybe plus some viral stuff. But yeah, trying to train with that was really tricky for me with Zoe.
Yeah.
Um, and that was a couple of years to recover properly from that as well.
So when did you first start experiencing symptoms? And it's probably one of those things that you would now know in hindsight compared to at
Yeah.
the time. Obviously, it's like, oh, if I'm just tired, I'm going to do it anyway. And then when you were diagnosed, I'm sure you kind of went, like if they explained, oh, you experiencing this, you're like, oh, actually, I have been for a while.
Yeah.
When did you actually first take steps to go down the path of this isn't normal?
Yeah, it was probably, I don't think I first started experiencing symptoms until Zoe was about maybe 7 or 8 months old. And it really kicked up after she had osteomyelitis, which is like a bone infection, and had
Yeah.
this crazy surgery. And we we're at the Austin for a week. And I think she was about 10 months old. And from about then, I think that was a bit of a turning point where it was just that really blew up everything a bit.
Yeah.
And it seemed to coincide with I'd just returned to work a month beforehand.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was about then. But to be honest, trying to get to the bottom of chronic fatigue is not easy in the usual GP system. I think I got told multiple times from doctors like, oh, it's just a part of being a mum, oh yeah, the sicknesses are normal. Like there was very much like no understanding. So I had to kind of keep pushing and pushing and pushing.
Yeah.
Until I, got a diagnosis from a doctor on chronic fatigue eventually, but there's no real way to treat chronic fatigue is the other
Uh,
thing. It's
yeah.
under-researched.
It's completely bizarre. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not quite as bizarre as Lyme's disease, where it's like
Yeah.
we don't know why you can't stand up, but it's along
Yes.
those lines as there's no real signs until they're
Yeah.
abundantly clear, and it's a real challenge.
Yes.
And I know, people who know you now would understand, but like for people who don't know, you're upbeat always, and
Mhm.
it's sort of like it would have been a real challenge because that loss of I can't do the
Yeah.
things that I want to do that I
Yeah.
know keep me well is so
Oof.
hard for people.
Oof. That was the
So hard.
hardest bit, I think. Being me and then not being able to be me was a very tricky time.
How did you cope with that?
Not very well. A lot of psychology sessions and
Yeah.
yeah, it was just time really of
Mm.
getting through that period. It was a really tricky time for our family.
Do you think that like was there some of the takeaways that you had from those psych sessions, and I'm sure you would have done a lot of your own
Mm.
researched and sort of got quite introspective through that time that now holds you in really good stead?
Absolutely. And probably one of the biggest things that I learned and I will carry with me forever came from Upwell. As
Yeah.
you probably know, they have a clinic that they've now sold off and somebody else runs, but it's called Zebras.
Yeah.
And it's a chronic pain and fatigue clinic. And they taught me so many things, but some of the key takeouts on that I still think about all the time is pacing. So something I am not naturally very good at, as you probably know. Um,
Probably. Yeah.
Pacing,
Yeah.
just not tipping yourself in 100% to something,
Mm.
um, or within the same week. Try and like be really conscious about what you're doing, why you're doing it, when you're
Yeah.
doing it, how you're doing it, and just make sure that it's at a good rhythm so that you're not cooking yourself for years.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, people who know you really well would know it's like, yep, that's you to a T. Is like you're
Yeah.
probably prone to doing a little bit too much too
Yes.
soon. But
Yes.
like I think as we get older, and I think that COVID did this for me personally, and I'm sure it did it for a lot of people too, is like you just had time to slow down, think,
Mhm.
like, and just there was a lot of introspection for me personally, and obviously, a drastic life change, such as a diagnosis of chronic
Mm.
fatigue or being forced to be at home for 6 months is sort of
Yeah.
like you end up just turning in. And I think that, I speak about health awareness a lot when it comes to people with their own health and fitness journeys, and the
Mm.
importance of knowing the way you react to certain things, and then your own strengths and what you
Yeah.
do well, but more importantly, knowing what can kind of tip you down that spiraling
Mm.
pathway. And I think that you would now have sort of markers in place where it's like I know when I'm starting to do this, and this is how I kind of pull myself out of it. And I
Yeah.
think that stuff when it comes to longevity is just so important.
Oh, huge. So that's exactly one of the other key things that Upwell taught me was about something called DIMS and SIMS. I'm not sure if you've heard of this
Sims and
theory
Sims.
before.
I don't know if I have.
It's danger in me and safety in me. So when you're thinking about your daily cup, you've got to make sure that you pouring in an even amount. So if your
Yeah.
DIMs are up really high, you've got to make sure you're weighting it back out with some
Sims
safety
and
in me
Sims.
things.
I like that. I mean, I talk about protecting your energy and filling up your cup
Mm,
all the time, but it's nice to have the actual, this is what it's called.
yes. Well,
The
there's
fun
actually some theory I can send you on it.
Sims and Sims.
Supporting. Yeah,
Love it.
yeah. There's a whole, I think there's maybe even like an infographic and like some examples. I just shared it with somebody the other day.
I will definitely take those. Now, skipping ahead a little bit.
Yeah.
So we've now gone from Zoe to chronic
Leo.
fatigue for a
Yeah.
couple of years
Yeah.
into Leo.
Yeah.
And then like you didn't train with us for a fair period through then, obviously through the
Yeah.
chronic fatigue you needed to rest, even though we always stayed in touch just over
Yeah.
messages, social media and stuff. And
Yeah.
then Leo was, what if he's 18 months? He would have been 6 months just about when you started back in the gym last February. Was it
Yeah.
February?
Yeah, I think it was like just after the summer holidays
Yeah.
that I kicked back in at BD was February, and by then I was feeling really good. I think
Yeah.
like lockdowns actually really helped me to rest finally.
Yeah.
Um,
Sort of enforced rest for sure.
yeah, it was actually quite helpful for not just me, but a lot of people I know that have experienced chronic fatigue. It was really good um, rest.
Yeah.
So yeah, I came into that feeling like I was ready. I was actually feeling so good having Leo. Um, and I think also like back on the why, my why was even stronger because I had diabetes in pregnancy.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden I was like, I was a bit heavier than I was used to being, but I also had this idea of that if I didn't kind of shift some of that weight, I was putting myself at a much higher risk of maintaining diabetes essentially, or actually getting type 2 diabetes. My
Yeah.
risk is
In the future.
50% higher than
Yeah.
most people.
Yeah, for sure. And it's sort of in some ways that can be quite crippling for people, or and it's
Mm-hmm.
almost like without the tools to then change that, and you're resourceful enough and motivated enough to be like, no, well, I'm going to find out a way to counter this, especially when health and fitness has been such an important part of your lifestyle for so long. But I think there's a
Yeah.
message there. It's like the some people I think struggle to pull themselves out of that mire of I'm at an increased risk, and it can almost be a little bit of paralysis by analysis or procrastination or whatever you wanted to
Mm-hmm.
call it. But I think you're a walking example of how, although your circumstances and genetics can, like they might be the gun, your
Mm-hmm.
lifestyle will still pull the trigger, on a
Yeah.
huge amount of the diseases like that, that although, you won't necessarily get them automatically, you may be at a higher
Mm-hmm.
risk of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like having that experience and then for diabetes to just go away after the placenta was out was a real like moment for me where I was like, gosh, I'm so lucky. And
Mm,
now I know, there's so much I can do to prevent not just that, but all sorts of other things that I've known my whole life.
yeah.
Exercise is the way to try and help prevent it. There's research
Yeah.
backing that is why people should exercise.
Yeah, I love it. And, I'd be as guilty as anyone in our industry. And it's a really hard fine line to balance between most people just view health as purely aesthetic, where it's like, well, if I'm skinny, then I'm healthy. And if I'm overweight, then I'm at higher
Yeah.
risk. And, you're a walking example. Like there's so much more to it.
Yeah.
There's, and COVID actually probably did people a real service in this area where we realized how important
Mm.
movement, stress management,
Yeah.
nutrition was for just our overall health, not
Yeah.
just our physical health. But I still think we as an industry could do a little bit better there, but it's also a
Mm,
hard thing. Is like it doesn't necessarily sell well. So it's
it's
one of those
true.
things where it's like,
Yeah.
well, do we tell people what they want and then give them what they need?
Yeah.
Or do the other way around? And I mean, that's a sort of ethical struggle I think that most trainers face. But I think
Yeah.
it also
Really
depends on the
interesting.
population that you're working with. Whereas, I tend to coach a more mature population
Mm,
in regards to age, and people are a little bit more balanced with
yeah.
or understanding of what's important. And whilst, aesthetics and weight loss is still high up on the priorities, it's not the
Yeah.
only thing.
Yeah.
Whereas when we're younger, it's probably, a higher ratio of importance.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really interesting. I was actually thinking about that the other day. I was like, is there any gyms that don't talk about fat loss and they just talk about like the health opportunities? But
Yeah.
yeah,
I
I know
mean,
what you mean. It just doesn't sell probably. And like everyone knows, but nobody goes for that really, unless something
well,
happens to you, like it has for me.
yeah, it can also be a bit of a gateway though, where, like 99% of the people I speak to when they come into the gym will mention weight loss as a goal.
Yeah,
And,
absolutely.
which is absolutely no problem. But inside the first 2 months,
Mm.
it will be less of a goal.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah,
still a goal, but people are like, no, I feel better. I'm sleeping
yeah,
better. My energy's better. But if you
yeah,
tell someone when they come into the gym and they're like, it's an emotional decision to join
yeah.
a gym. No one wakes up on a day and they're like, everything's going amazingly in my life. I think I'm going to go and sweat it out with a PT for an hour. Like that doesn't happen.
Yes.
But they wake up and their jeans don't fit, or they wake
Yeah,
up and they've had a big weekend and they're not feeling
yeah,
the best about themselves,
yeah.
and then they join a gym.
That's
Yeah.
right.
And then if a PT tells them that it's like, oh, well, actually by exerting energy, you're going to have more energy. Well, that doesn't make any
Mm.
sense. Like you
Yeah,
sort of have to feel it to then
yeah.
appreciate and know it. So I think that shift from, how I look to how I feel tends to happen whilst you're actually in the practice of actually doing the thing.
Oh, and that is something that like I probably even underestimated. Like I knew that there was going to be these more, clinical health benefits, but I don't think I was prepared for the mental health benefits and how much better I felt. And, there was a point where I was like, gosh, feeling the best I'd ever felt in my entire life.
Yeah.
And to the point where Anthony was like, I don't even know what to do with you, Cara. Like, this is so new. Going off the back of chronic fatigue to then this is a lot.
Yeah. It's too much.
Yeah, he's like, whoa, who is this? But I think I've found a nice middle ground now.
Perfect. Now let's go back to that. So that rejoining in February, can we just give people an idea of how much has changed? So speaking of fat loss, how much weight have you lost since you rejoined last February now?
I don't know the exact calculation off my head, but it was hanging around like 15 kilos.
I, I,
Um,
I reckon it was about 15 kilos just before Christmas, was it?
yeah,
Um,
so I was, what was
This
it
is
like?
the 1st of May for those of you who are listening,
Yeah.
2026. So
Yeah, I think like it's around about 15 to like almost it got to one point after gastro at about
yeah,
18, but we've leveled back out again.
good,
So
good. We
yeah,
certainly don't
that was
count
not normal.
gastro as loss. Yeah,
That was not
a
good.
a little bit extras. So
Yeah.
I remember sitting down with you. We had about a 45-minute chat after training one day about nutrition, and
Mm,
you were talking about starting to slowly trend, because you've previously mentioned that you were heavier than you would have
mm,
liked. But I'll be honest, I have those chats a lot. And
mm,
for someone to lose, 15 kilos pretty much off their own bats, and, like we'd speak about it regularly about changes and stuff like that, but without that one-on-one accountability is
yeah.
so rare to kind of hear the like hear the theory and then implement it yourself is
Mhm,
absolutely bananas. So I'm interested to hear from your perspective, like what your takeaways were after we spoke. And I know I'm going back,
mm,
15 months, but
yeah.
obviously it's stuck because
Yeah.
people look at you now, it's like, it's incredible. You're like a
Yeah.
completely different person.
Yeah. I think one of the big changes has been not having toast and a coffee for breakfast. Like being really conscious of getting my protein in. That was definitely something from our nutritional chats that really stuck. That I realized that I actually have to eat protein, otherwise I'm going to end up starving and eating
Yeah.
whatever's in the pantry later on. So
I'm sure
um,
so many people are listening, like rolling their eyes, being like, "There he goes,
there
protein."
he goes again.
It's
He's
like
brainwashed
he's
her.
like crapping on about the protein again. It's like,
It,
we get it, mate.
oh gosh, it's true. It really made a huge difference for me because I think especially I was even really conscious of this coming off the back of learning how to manage diabetes in pregnancy.
Yeah,
I noticed the difference in like my energy through the day because I had to like eat the right amount of carbs and fats and proteins. And I noticed the difference when any of those were dipping, it was making more of an impact. So I finally, I think, knew once I had that chat with you how important it really was on such a deep health level. It makes such a big difference to get that stuff right.
yeah,
Um, I think it just resonated on a different level for me that it's really important the way it's working inside your body when you eat that freaking egg with your toast.
yeah. As opposed to just toast.
Yes, and
And
like a little smear of avocado or something is not just a cute, cool thing to do that's going to stop you from affording a house. It's actually, it's going to slow down the way that the blood sugar spikes. And,
yeah,
there's so much more happening in your body than you realize.
yeah. It just, for those of you playing at home, like protein, why it's so important to add to your meals, and the difference that it makes to having, just toast compared to toast and a couple of eggs, is it slows down the digestion and the release of energy into your bloodstream.
Mhm.
So if you have a couple of bits of toast, like by 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, we're starving. Whereas if
Mhm.
we're able to pair it up with a couple of eggs and just spread out that, spread out that energy release, more often than not, you'll be able to get through to lunchtime. And as a result, overall consume less and then be, like just much more balanced throughout the day with your hunger signals, and less likely to reach for, crappy snacks is basically
Yeah.
the goal, or Kmart
Yeah.
calories, as we like to call
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. And just not as up and down on the tiredness and fatigue and emotions, all the things. Like you just feel much more of a balanced human when you eat what you've been told to do your whole life. When you
But,
finally
but
do
actually
it, you're
do it.
like, oh, that's why.
That's what they were saying. Yeah.
That's what they've
Uh,
been banging on about since grade 6.
It's funny, like when I asked you to come on the podcast, I was making notes of like stuff I remember talking to you about over the past, now 15 months. And I was thinking, I was like, from that chat, like, I speak to people about protein almost every time.
Mm.
So it's like that wasn't unique to
Mm.
me anyway. But I was like, the thing that jumped out at me, I remember we were talking about, like I always ask people, what would you typically eat in a day? Like
Mm.
just run me through what's happening so I can get a bit of an idea of where we're at. And I remember you saying it's like, on after dinner, you'd have some ice cream. And
Oh,
like,
yes, absolutely. I
for
couldn't
whatever
stop
reason, that
ice
stuck in
cream.
my head.
Yeah, we love the ice cream, and we thought we were being healthy because we're buying like that low calorie, whatever it is,
Yeah.
like only 300 calories per tub ice cream. I don't know, it was just a weird cycle that we were in, but we don't
Yeah.
feel like we need that as much anymore.
And in isolation, that's not a big deal. But I
No.
remember, I remember chatting to you about it under the context of creating a calorie deficit. Was like, if we balanced it all out, that 200, 300 calories of ice
Mm.
cream at the end of the day, you could have a really good day of eating, and that could be the difference between
Yeah.
maintaining your weight and
Yeah.
losing. And that was just the thing that jumped out to me. I was like, I definitely remember talking to you about ice cream after dinner.
Yeah. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I still love ice cream, and we just fit it in a different way now. So instead of getting the crappy low calorie stuff,
Yeah.
now we get like Luther's scoops, which is the best one you can get from Brunswick. Get
Yeah.
it. But
Oops.
like monthly or something, eat
Yeah.
eat it
So it's not
completely
that
unashamedly.
Yeah, and it's not that it's, healthy or unhealthy. It's just that, well, if I want to feel good, then
Mm,
I need to fill up that, that overall lesser calories to lose weight
yeah,
with more whole foods, healthier ingredients.
yeah,
It's not that we cut out ice cream forever. It's just that maybe it doesn't fit my goals for right now or
yeah,
every night. Like
yeah.
it's
Every
just not.
night was a bit much, and it's nice that I don't feel like I need that anymore. Which I feel like
Awesome.
maybe we can thank the protein.
I, I think we can. Now, it's one thing to lose 2, 3, 4 kilos. It's an entirely another thing to lose 15 and keep it off. Like,
Yeah.
what do you think was one of the key reasons, or what helped you be consistent? Because that is the biggest challenge. I think,
Mm,
I'm sure your friends would now ask you, like, how did you do it? What's your secret? What have you cut out? All this sort of stuff.
mm,
And the answer's always so boring, and I'm sure they roll their eyes.
yeah.
I don't know, I just do it. But like from your perspective, why do you think that you've been able to do it consistently and other people struggle?
Mm. Well, I think it comes back to that I actually like genuinely love coming to the gym. Like I
Mm.
really enjoy working out. So I not every day, don't get me wrong. Some days I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, I don't feel like going. But
Yeah.
it's one of those things we're talking about, the sims and the dims. It's a sim for me. Like I love rolling up to the gym and exercising is something that I love. And I just made this promise to myself that I was going to come 3 days a week, no matter what, obviously, unless I'm injured or really sick, but
Yeah.
you can always kind of flex around those 6 days that are available. So
Yeah.
that was a promise that I made. So the consistency just, I don't know.
Yeah.
I promised myself that I was going to come 3 times a week and I did it.
Lots of people promise themselves stuff though.
Mm, I don't know. Maybe my why was a bit stronger than it has been in the past.
Yeah. And I would say that that's a really big one, is be like actually having a reason
Yeah.
beyond I want to
Yeah.
look and feel better, and in a way being accountable, to your family is much
Yeah.
more powerful than being accountable to
Yeah.
yourself. And in order to show up as the best version of Kara, I'm
Yeah.
sure that took a little bit of um like, as we've said it a lot, is just that introspection of like, this is what's important and this is how
Mm,
I'm going to do that.
yeah. Absolutely. Just prioritizing it, and it's not always easy amongst the kids and the juggle and all of that, but it just feels good when you do it. So I think that's also a thing, like once you
Yep.
get to a certain point, you start feeling strong, it becomes like a little bit of a thing because you start feeling better and then you just want to turn up more because you get
Yeah.
stronger and it yeah
And that would
escalates.
be the difference between motivation and emotion. And I
Yeah.
think lots of people think that they're motivated when they start, and it's not necessarily the case. They're more emotional when they start.
Yeah.
Whereas that motivation is what you just referenced then, is when you get started and you make a couple of tweaks, and you're training consistently now, and maybe you don't have ice cream one night and then the next night and then the next night, and then the jump on the scales again, it's like, oh, I've lost a kilo or I've lost
Yeah.
500 grams, and you start to get that positive reinforcement from the actions that you're doing.
Yeah.
That's when the motivation comes.
Yeah, I think tracking the goals as well was really helpful. Like that definitely made me stay on track because
Yeah.
when I did what you told me to do with the nutrition,
Yeah.
and then did what I promised myself to do to turn up 3 days a week,
Yeah.
that's when the goals were being reached weekly all of a sudden.
Yeah. And it starts to spiral too. Like I'm really upfront with people when I say that the training you do in the gym will have like next to no effect on your
Mm,
overall weight loss, like kilogram wise.
yeah,
That's not to say it's not important, because it's incredibly important. Like the two go hand in hand, where, you know, the gym, and our gym in particular, I think is such a positive space.
mm,
It's due to the people who train here, is that it's sort of like, it's so motivating and inspiring and
mm,
fun, because it's everyone's very similar. Like
yeah,
it's a very similar demographic. Like you come in here and you see people exactly like yourself. And when you see people who are doing well, it's inspiring.
yeah,
Then when it
definitely.
sort of starts to snowball from there, is that when you leave here, you're more likely to cook a healthier meal or cook a
Yeah,
healthier lunch. Like
absolutely.
I
Yeah.
know that my nutrition and fitness is better when I'm training well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
As soon as I drop off the bandwagon of training, or I'm feeling a little bit of uninspired in
Yeah.
regards to a current goal, that's when I start to struggle a little bit, or
Yeah.
have the extra corn chips or whatever it is. Like
Yeah.
the corn chips is my vice, so I'll just like
Yeah.
smash out some corn chips and hummus.
It does. It creeps back in pretty quickly. So
Yeah,
it's
but the two go hand in hand.
yeah,
I guess.
absolutely. It makes you feel yeah, we've noticed that what was it the other day we were out and really busy and had to like take Zoe through Macca's because she was starving.
Mm.
And for the first time, like back in the day, we would have both been like, oh, let's just get something.
Yeah,
And we were
McFlurry,
like,
because McFlurries are awesome.
yeah, but we
Yeah.
were both just like, oh, that's so weird. This is new. Like we're not just gonna like accidentally get something. We just didn't even feel like it.
Well, your palate changes a little bit too. Like the stuff that you
Mm.
used to like, you sort of just like, oh, not for me, or it's not
Yeah.
appealing. And
Yeah.
I always say it's like it's hard to unlearn stuff. So as soon as you start to dig a little deeper on, you know, and beyond the level of that's unhealthy and this is healthy, and it's like, well, why? And a lot of people say, oh, I
Mm.
don't know. But as soon as you start to know why,
Yeah.
you'd probably find that you're probably drinking a little bit less, or we're
Oh,
having a little bit
absolutely.
less snacky, sugary stuff, or now we're
Yeah.
starting to go to the extra effort to make sure that there's protein with my lunch, or go to the extra
Yeah.
effort of this stuff. It all
Yeah.
starts to snowball.
Definitely. Yeah.
What you would consider as a fairly drastic result, like 15 kilos off anyone is amazing.
Yeah. It's a
And
lot.
then, it all started with pretty small changes.
Yeah. Definitely.
Subtle tweaks, not having toast for breakfast, pairing it up with a
Yeah.
couple of eggs is a pretty minor change, but that's how it
Yeah.
starts.
Yeah. And that I would say is one of the biggest changes I had to make because we've always eaten quite healthily. Like we've
Yeah.
always just been a meat and veg or, Uber Eats definitely something that's snuck in way too much back then.
Yep.
Not so much now, but yeah, it's the breakfast and making sure there's protein and then trying not to eat ice cream every night, I think was the two biggest shifts.
There you go. So it's like drastic results, small changes.
Yep.
I know people are going to think I gave you a script.
No. And
Okay.
also time is the other thing, like just not putting pressure on myself to be like, I'm going to hit this goal in 6 weeks, or it's like a 12-week shred program. It was like,
Yep.
I knew that it was going to be a year was my goal to shift
Do you feel
that
like that took,
rate.
that took the pressure off?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a lot. There's we put far too much pressure on ourselves to be successful in 28 days.
Mm.
And then, if you only lost 2 kilos in
Yeah.
28 days, and if I say only, that would be the people who did, oh, I've only lost 2 kilos. Whereas most trainers worth their salt would be like, that's fabulous.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Awesome. Because
Yeah.
it's 2 kilos less than when you started. And B, 500 grams a week is perfect.
Yeah.
It means
That's
that the large part of what you're doing physiologically is it's not a crazy deficit. It's very
yeah.
sustainable. And you can always tweak the practice of the diet to make it a little bit easier. But
Yeah.
physiologically, that's a good place to be.
Yeah.
Whereas we're a little bit warped by probably, even TV shows like The Biggest Loser and stuff like
Mm.
that, where they're like 6 kilos and everyone's like,
I
whoa,
know. And
amazing.
everyone's clapping. You're like,
It's,
but is she starving and hangry? Like,
well, of course. And the
I
proof is in
don't
the
cope
pudding.
well when I'm hangry.
Well, the proof's in the pudding, right? Like how many people off that show gain the weight back? Whereas slower
Mm.
results are a much better indicator of long-term sustainability, because anyone who loses weight surely doesn't want to gain it back.
Yeah.
That's
No.
not part of the plan.
No.
But the longer it takes to do it, the more proof you build up that it is sustainable, that you can do it
Yeah.
for a long time. And
Yeah.
often embracing that's the way you get the fastest results anyway.
Definitely.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I love that lesson. I think is just take the pressure off the immediacy of results and start to get to work on the process and the
Yeah.
system.
Yeah. I think that's what worked for me anyway, just not feeling like I had some fast goal that I had to hit or anything. It was more just like long-term health benefits. And, I didn't want to feel like I was cutting out too many calories because I was starved. Like I'm a hungry person. And plus, on the days that I was training, I would just, I'm hungry. So I have to eat. So
Yeah.
can't be in too much of a calorie deficit because I'd probably kill somebody.
Oh, well, it comes back to your dims and hims too, where it's like,
Yeah.
food and training should be a sim. But
Yes.
if we're too drastic on a deficit, it definitely
Yeah.
becomes a dim.
Yeah,
It
absolutely.
starts to take energy away from
Yeah.
stuff that we would consider to be far more important than our body image, and that's our ability to, parent, be a
Yes.
wife,
Yes.
all of the things that are much more important than how we look.
Yeah,
It
absolutely.
should all go hand in hand. Like I was say to anyone is like, if anything we're doing in the gym is taken away from
Mm.
what you do with the rest of your life, then we've gone too far, either
Yeah.
through injury or through stress, and we just
Yeah.
need to pull it back. It should complement
Yeah.
and not add further stress. People are
Yes.
busy enough.
Yes, absolutely. Which is my new juggle now, is trying to figure out, I've got all these new like fitness goals and I'm like, how do I make sure I keep myself grounded on, pushing myself now because I feel like I can, but also maintaining my overall well-being.
Yeah, that can be a challenge too. And I
Mm,
also had a follow-up question. So we spoke pretty earlier on this year, I think, about transitioning away from fat loss being the predominant goal
mm.
of your nutrition
Yeah.
into a performance goal. Yeah, and
Yes.
that would be the fitness goals that you've just referenced. But
Yeah.
a lot of people struggle with that. And I personally struggled with that, was like, well, now that I'm not focusing as much on my overall intake. Like I'm still
Yeah.
trying to fuel with a lot of the similar foods, which is
Yes.
why I think, the way I talk about eating is successful is because it's less predicated on the overall quality. It's more on the
Yeah.
quantity. So
Yeah.
just in the quantity makes it, overall maintainable compared to just
Mm.
overhauling your diet anytime your goal
Yeah.
changes.
Yeah.
But how did you go with changing the goals, and did you feel like that was a little bit harder than you thought?
Yeah, well, I think it was exciting at first because I had never really, not for a long time, set myself a big fitness goal.
Yeah.
And then there was a bit of a transition on, the nutrition and stuff, because it went from just, I was essentially dieting to then trying to eat maintenance calories, but then it actually became, well, hang on a second, now I'm exercising because I took on a running goal. I
Yeah.
actually need to eat more, otherwise I get tired. So
Yeah, I'm in another deficit without even
yeah, like
realizing. Yeah.
trying to avoid a deficit and doing the opposite. So that was like a bit of a balance, because there was definitely some moments where I'm like, yes, now I'm gonna eat a burger, and like, which
Yeah.
is fine. And I love doing that
Yeah.
because if I go for a huge run, it's really fun eating a big burger afterwards and loving it.
No. Oh yeah. After our run yesterday, we were smashing homemade sausage rolls and
Oh,
oven
so
croissants.
good.
It's like,
Yes.
and I'm not a massive one for exercising to eat.
Or no,
Yeah,
no, no. It's not
it's
about
not a
that.
it's not a
No,
sustainable thing, but it
no.
does occasionally happen if you're chasing a fitness goal outside the normal of just training and
Yeah.
running or swimming or doing
Yes.
whatever. Is sometimes it is totally justified, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But
You
yeah,
somehow have to get.
I certainly want to put a little disclaimer in there, is it's not, it's not the most sustainable way
No.
to do things, but when it comes to athletic performance, sometimes it needs to happen.
Yeah. Well, it was getting to the point where I was like, well, how am I going to get an extra 500 calories today without making myself feel sick or something
Yeah, and
after
that's
those
where it's
long
like that.
runs?
The easiest way to adjust that is typically through carbohydrate intake, is
Yeah.
rather than having a little bit less rice or bread or whatever it is. It can be as simple as just adding a piece of toast to your
Yes.
brekkie if you normally have one, and
Yeah.
then having a little bit extra rice with your dinner or potatoes or
Yeah.
whatever it is. Like,
Yeah.
it's about, that overall balanced approach, which, from being so consistent and so considered with, adjusting your inputs and outputs for the
Mm.
last 12 months, that stuff becomes really easy.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
because you feel as though you're in control, and just with a little bit of self-experimentation and how you feel, and then, you know, continuing to monitor the overall results, it's a
Yeah.
pretty simple tweak and something that
Yeah.
you definitely now got right on top of, which is excellent.
Yeah. It's nice now actually as well to feel like in this maintenance space, just that, I can just eat what makes me feel good and I still
Yeah.
follow all the, principles that you've taught me, but I can still just eat as much as I kind of need really to make me full and happy and be able to do
Yeah.
my day. So it feels good.
Yeah. Awesome. Transitioning away from fat loss a little bit and nutrition, I want to ask all of the ladies that I interview, because it's something that's incredibly important to me. Obviously, as the father of a little girl, I feel as though I understand the boys. I've got the boys on lock. I know the way that
Mhm.
they're not quite as sophisticated. Bless their cotton socks. They're a little bit easier to read, but me, Mia in particular, and if you listen to the episode I did with Lucy,
Mm.
you would know this. Like, the thought of her being active and strong is great. I love,
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
she loves training in the gym. She's always
Yeah.
flipping around on the rings and, you know, helping
Mm.
push-ups and all sorts of
Yeah.
stuff. But there will come a day where she is mortified of her appearance,
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
mortified of something that will be completely outside of her control, and I know it's going to break me. So
Yeah.
it's like parenting through teenage years from a female's perspective, and Lucy's answer to was all about like building her confidence,
Mm.
you know, to the point where it's about just her feeling completely comfortable with her physicality and, you know, her ability
Yeah.
as well. Like, have you got anything to add to that, or a different point of view?
Yeah, I think I actually am remembering back to listening to Lucy's interview and kind of nodding along because it sounds like we've gone down a very similar path of being really conscious as well about like the words that we use and making sure that the way we talk about ourselves and our body is always very positive. It's like, mummy's really strong now, not, mummy's fat ass is gone. We would, make sure we
Yeah.
just never say stuff like that in front of her. And there's definitely been times where, there's people in our lives that have commented on my fat loss or whatever it might
Yeah.
be. And I've just had to kind of reiterate, oh no, I'm really strong now.
Yeah. Or I feel great, or
I
something like that.
feel good and I'm feeling amazing. I'm really strong and just
Mm.
trying to be the example to Zoe that that's not what it's all about. It's about more than that. Um,
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, even, you know, I was actually saying to people in the lunchtime class before, like, she's such a she keeps saying, she's like, oh, this dress isn't beautiful enough. And I'm like, where the hell does
yeah,
this come from? Like,
yeah,
that has come from absolute nowhere. Like, not once has Danny ever asked me, like, oh, is this, you know, is this dressy enough? You know, or is this
yeah,
something like, I've got no idea where she's heard
yeah,
that. Must have been
yeah.
some ABC, but she's already, yeah. I'm just like, what
It's
the hell?
there.
At
I
four,
know. It's really
four.
tricky, especially like Mia and Zoe are the same, where they're like real fancy girls. Like they like the sparkles and the dresses and like
No, Danny tells
just
people it comes
in
from
them.
me. I don't know where it comes from.
It did not come from me either. So I don't know where it came from, but it's in
Oh,
them.
Fancy Pants Anthony for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely Anthony and his love of sparkles and feather boas.
It's bizarre, but yeah, I think
Yeah, it's
it's going to
tricky.
be one of those things that the proof will be in the pudding, and
Yeah,
we won't know until it happens. But yeah,
I know.
I'm a big one for the language, especially because
Yes.
you only have to ask ladies in particular. I've asked a few people I've coached, is like, oh, you know, has anyone ever made a comment about your appearance or your body from like a young
Yes.
age that's really stuck with you? And
Yes.
everyone to a T can say yes and
Absolutely.
recount the exact time it happened,
Yeah.
positive or negative. And
Yep.
typically the negative is what tends to hang with us. But
Yeah.
yeah, where possible, I want to avoid that, because that
Yes.
relationship with her fitness and her health is something that is so important, but at the same, like, so
Mm,
destructive too, when it's, like when you see what happens, and it's
I know. Well, those Dove
very hard to watch.
campaigns you've probably seen.
The which ones?
Like the Dove campaigns, the Dove
Like
soap.
the skincare brand.
Yeah, there's some
Are they
ads.
on free
They've
to
been
wear?
running for no, they've been running for like 10 years now. I think if you
Yeah.
put them into Google, I don't know if they're still keeping them up to date, but it's exactly that. It's all about like the images that young women are fed and
On
the
social
impact
media.
that has on them. Yeah, I think I saw one recently. It's a lot, like the perfect woman and what you're supposed to look like and
Yeah.
all of those messages that you get fed. So yeah, it's a lot to watch out for our little babes. I think like for us, the other thing that we always try and do is like remind her that we don't talk about other people's bodies,
Oh
or
yeah.
appearances, and like she'd never hear us, commenting on someone else's body in front of them, or it would
Yeah.
always be like, oh wow, you're looking strong or fit or something.
Yeah, for sure. I love that. And we definitely try and do that too. And I was like, that's probably something I had to learn with William for sure. He's like an elephant. He doesn't forget anything, and he's
Yeah.
always listening. He's like
Yes.
one of those old creepy butlers, in like the mansion.
Ah!
Who's just like, you open the door and he's there, and he's like, oh,
He's
what's he heard now?
listening when you think they're not listening.
Well, and they don't understand sarcasm, which doesn't work for me at all, because I'm
Yeah.
like, that's one of my like main forms of like humor, I think. But yeah, always learning, always trying to do the best we can, I think, because it's so important to me that
Mm,
they have a good positive experience,
yeah.
not a positive outlook. Because if they choose to be in the gym or not, like I couldn't care less. Like as
Yeah.
long as they're active with something and that they
Moving.
find a mode of activity that they really enjoy,
Yeah.
great. I don't care
That's
what
it.
sport it is. I don't care what it is,
Yeah.
up to them. But it's yeah, they have to find something, I
Yeah.
think.
As long
Uh,
as they're moving their body. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Which
Um,
we know will make them feel good.
Correct. Speaking of social media, and we briefly touched on it before, like what are some of your favorite sources of information on the old socials? Like who do you follow that you think is really good?
I actually like deleted a bunch of fitness influencers. Like
That
when it
would mean that they
comes,
suck. Yeah.
yeah, I
And
don't
not them.
although it's really hard to delete people on Instagram. To unfollow takes bloody forever because I love following interesting people. One of my favorites is actually, I can't remember which university it is, but there's Dr. Felicia Jacka, I think is her name.
The Felicia Jacker.
I can send you
Yeah.
the exact one. She runs a research team called the Food Mood Center.
Okay.
And they have been studying nutrition and
Yep.
its impacts on essentially like even preconception. So, like your mother's way that they fed themselves and the impact that has on you, your gut health, like your
All the
mental
genes
health.
you express and all that sort of.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah. So, like, it's
Very deep. Yeah.
really interesting. I find it really
Hey.
fascinating, but more from like a preconception point of view as well.
Yeah.
And like a gut health perception, and how that has an impact on your mental health. That really fascinates me and
Yeah.
something that I get pretty passionate about, especially for children, I think. You
Oh
know,
yeah.
our kids ate Maccas occasionally. So, like, don't get me wrong, we're not perfect, but yeah, I get pretty fired up about making sure that the kids get what they need from a basic nutrition perspective.
Yeah, that is a bit of a weird one. Like I'm often torn for like not our kids, and like it's one of the few things that I would probably get, like confession time, like really judgy about
Yeah,
as well.
same.
It's like,
I'm judging with you, unfortunately. I try not, but
I
kids
know.
eat Maccas, kids eat
Oh,
KFC
yeah,
occasionally.
yeah, and it's not about being perfect. Like kids'
No,
nutrition is no different to
yeah,
adults' nutrition. They need to be exposed to everything. They need to feel as though you're not being restrictive.
yes, yes,
But so when our kids are out, like the only thing that's a hard no with us is soft drink. is the big one.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
there's just absolutely zero benefit
Yeah.
to it, in my opinion, even though I drink it, but
I
I'm
was
an
going to
adult.
say,
I
you
was,
love
yeah,
it,
I was
don't
going to say,
you?
no, let's relax on love it, but I consume it, but but I'm also an adult and I can make my own calls.
Yeah.
Whereas when a kid's growing up, they do become a
Yeah.
representation of what you feed them.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah.
as harsh as that might sound, it's like, well, it is
Mm.
true. Like they are in our environment, they are in our care,
Yeah.
and it doesn't matter if they're fussy or not, you still
Yeah.
have to find a way to kind of make sure that you're giving them the best possible chance, because
Yeah.
habits they form now from this young age are
Mm.
either going to hold them in good stead or be really hard to unlearn and then relearn a new way.
Yeah, definitely. I think like, there's no doubt there's certain kids that have, sensory things happening and it makes it really hard to
Oh,
get
for
them to
sure.
eat.
Yeah.
But like Zoe just goes through real waves of fussiness and like
Mm.
it's one of those things where we just do what we're told to do and keep putting the food in front of her. And if she doesn't
Yeah.
eat it, at least it's there and doing what we're supposed to be doing according to the Instagram food kids thing.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And it's especially hard because it's so, it's one of those things that like I mean, I don't know about you, but I didn't read any books on parenting or anything like that before I became a father, and it wasn't something that I researched. But that's also probably my own personality type, is that I'm probably naively confident about
Yeah.
my ability at most things. Like without any proof,
Yes.
I'd be like, yeah, I can do that. So, like approaching parenting is like, why wouldn't I be bad? And you're like, why wouldn't I be good? It's like, well,
Yeah.
mate, you could actually be really bad. But
Yeah.
it's like when you're already nervous about your ability to do things, it's so easy to overanalyze that stuff. It's like, just make sure that they eat as much as they need, but try and
Mm.
put good quality ingredients in front of them
Yeah.
as much as you can.
Yeah. And that's the best that you can do is put it in front of them.
Simple as that.
Even if they throw it all over the freaking floor and you're just like popping it back in the bin every day.
Well, that's out of your control. You can only
Yeah.
control
Yeah, exactly.
what you
That's it.
can.
But yes, it is so important and something that we try our best to do.
Sure. What are you working on at the moment, fitness wise, health wise, in that sphere? What's on the current horizon?
So my current fitness goal is a half marathon.
Yeah.
So
Have you
I
ever done one before? Have you done,
never,
never
I
done a
I
half
don't
marathon?
think like I'd ever ran further than 10K. I probably like think that school cross country was only
Yeah.
ever 10K from memory.
Yep.
That was probably the furthest I'd ever ran. So
That's a pretty intense school cross country. Was that
yeah,
secondary
I
school?
was one of those like state team kids that
Oh,
I
okay.
really loved it. I love
Yeah.
like really liked it.
Yeah.
It was my thing. But yeah, recently I did a 15K. I did my first event. I did a 15K
Was that
event.
the Porty Twilight run? Was
No,
it?
that was a fun run. That was the
Yeah.
longest I'd ran ever.
Yeah.
And that was really fun. I felt so strong and good coming into it, and probably hadn't been doing as much running as I could have in the lead up. But
Yeah.
I think it was just thanks to Jim. I was feeling really strong and pulled up amazingly. Was great. And then I did the 15K Warburton trail run, which I absolutely loved.
Oh, that's right. I'd forgotten about that one. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was in March. And so my new goal was the half marathon, which is coming up in 6 weeks.
Yep.
But I have been managing some niggles which have popped
Yeah.
up,
Slight
which
roadblocks.
according to the physio is quite normal. Once you kick over the 10K mark, that's where, things start becoming obvious with your running. So we're working on a bunch of those at the moment and tweaking my run style and fixing my shoes and doing all these things that I never even thought I would have to think about when it came to just going for a run.
To say
Um,
things are getting pretty serious when you start tweaking up your running gait.
Yeah, it feels like things have gotten serious all of a sudden, which I'm actually loving. It's shifted to a hobby, which
Yeah.
is really nice because I don't know if I had hobbies when I, was just looking after Zoe, and now I've got two kids. It's nice to have some more hobbies in the
Yeah.
mix. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, it was funny. I was saying to Danny yesterday, I was like, can't believe how much I've enjoyed running ever.
Yeah.
And like her goal of the marathon, like she'll tell anyone I just piggyback off the back of her goals. And I
Yeah.
kind of do. I'm just like,
Yeah.
what do you
I'm
want
the
to do? I was
same.
like, yeah, I'll do it too. And then she
Sounds
always says
fun.
that I'm coming in over the top of it. But I'm like, yeah, once you get past that initial hurdle of this sucks and I'm going to die, running
Yeah.
is so much fun.
Absolutely. I think that first 5K, even once you are like up to the 15K mark,
Mm.
as a baseline, 5K can still feel hard.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
But like
it's
as
good.
as soon as you kind of break through that plateau, like running is so like the running community is so awesome.
We're loving it. It's something that I didn't expect to fall in love with, and
Yeah,
now I can't believe how much I'm loving it.
yeah,
It's yeah, the community is really cool. You're surrounded by amazing families, so you can see like there's a lot of parents that they'll both be there, and the kids will be there, and the kids are doing like the 5Ks, fun
yeah,
run. Yeah, it's really
yeah.
cool
Fun runs are
community.
great vibes. Great
Yeah,
vibes.
yeah. People that are just, doing their best to be their best.
Yeah. Yeah, like I was saying to Danny at the start of this year, I was like, I want to do more fitness events, just stuff
Yeah,
where you're out and about, Spartans, fun
yeah,
runs, whatever it is, because, fitness can be quite mundane or
yeah,
like, and it is a solo journey in the way of, like no one can lift the weights for you. No one
yeah,
can run the Ks for you. Like we get that, but you can make it so much easier when you've got stuff to look forward to
yeah,
or, communities that you're a part of that really kind of drive that enjoyment or,
yeah,
you know, fulfillment just beyond that, just another day, another session. It's just stuff on the horizon. And there's a lot more to fitness and health, I think, than most people can ever try and get the chance to explore. And
yeah,
some of those fun runs, amazing. So
yeah,
good. Like so many
absolutely.
inspirational stories. So like just so much excitement.
Absolutely. And I think like I've definitely got that from BDs, that community. But then, thanks to how much I've been able to increase my fitness, I'm now able to join a running club, or like I've been doing the Her Trails
Yep.
community runs, and have then connected with a bunch of women in the north that are also really keen runners. So starting to look at, just syncing up some people to chat with and go for runs with in the local area. And
Awesome.
just being around people that are interested in that is really cool.
Love it. Love it. Tough question. And if you
Yeah.
can't answer it straight away, that's totally okay. What's something that you've recently changed your mind on?
Recently.
Or it doesn't have to be two. Oh, okay. Recently, as maybe in the last 24 months. Doesn't have to be too recently.
Recently. Hmm,
Can be anything. Can be a mindset shift. Can be
anything.
something you thought to be true that you realized wasn't.
Hmm, I'm trying to think. I don't feel like I've had any huge.
Breakthroughs.
Uh, yeah, not that I've changed my mind on. I guess like one of the big changes is just the way that gym has gone from being like something that I've just done for the health benefits to now like I'm back to, I guess, where I was when I was younger, back to it being for the fun of it. So
Yeah,
that's a
that
bit
can
of
be
a
a
mindset.
change.
Yeah, that's a
Okay.
bit of a mindset shift that has happened for me, is that it's not just something that
Something
I'm
you have to do to
doing
tick a
to
box.
get healthy or to get
Yep.
health benefits. I'm doing it just because I love it. And I love the community that I get to be amongst because of it.
I think that's a very valid answer. And I do want to make a point on something that you said before where it feels like a hobby. It feels like something that you
Mm,
forward to. With the nutrition coaching, stress management is becoming a bigger and bigger part of that
mm,
program in regards to like how important it is and how much better you execute healthy behaviors when you're
yeah,
feeling good.
yeah,
Like when your mental health is taken care of and you feel like you've got the extra energy to dedicate to that.
Yeah.
And I'll ask people all the time, mums in particular,
Mm.
like what's something you do that you enjoy? And the amount of blank stares or blank
Yeah.
faces, and like selfishly, and our house is no different. I'm
Yeah.
way better at prioritizing my own fun
Yeah.
than Danny is. And it's
Yeah.
something often that like I should actually not be as good at it. I'm probably too good at it.
Taking
But
up all the time.
yeah, exactly. And I do need to be better at
Mm.
understanding what's important for everyone compared to what's
Yeah.
important just for me, for
Yeah.
sure. I'm not saying that I've perfectly nailed this, but by
Yeah.
just reintroducing something in your day that is purely for you and for
Yeah.
no one else,
Yeah.
the second hand of that becomes that it is better for everyone else because you're in such a better space and you
Yeah.
feel like you've got more energy and
Yeah.
back to the dims and hymns, like
Yeah.
you're filling up your cup.
that that is something that yes, same. I think Anthony always did really well, and I think he kicked it into overdrive when
Yeah,
Zoe was born because he was getting the mental health benefits from running, and that's
yeah,
where he ended up all
yeah,
of a sudden becoming an ultra runner. um
yeah,
but now we realize that it's so important for both of us, and he has always been really supportive of
yeah,
making me do it. And so we both now are very good at carving out time and pushing each other out the door to make those things happen, whatever it might
yeah.
be,
And
to
we're the
back each
exact
other.
same in
Yeah.
the house. And I mean, Danny and I were talking about this the other day where it's just like, oh, well, we're trainers and we still battle the same issues
Yeah.
that everyone
Yeah.
else does in regards to logistics and stuff like that. And
Logistics.
yes,
Yeah.
we obviously enjoy training, but just you said, it's
Yeah.
like, I don't always feel like actually doing it, but we
Yeah.
still do it regardless. And that's
Yeah.
practice. But I think so much of that potential resentment
Yes.
can build up from like, why are you doing that when we're juggling a new baby girl,
Yeah.
or we're doing this,
Yeah.
or we need to do this, we need to do this, and you're out running around, or you're
Yeah.
going to the gym, or you're doing something for you. And so much of that I think can just come back to clear conversation as to like,
Yeah.
this is what I need
Yes.
for me to feel good, and that can all just be avoided just by being completely upfront and
Mhm.
just really clear on. It doesn't even have to be like a conversation of I'm struggling at the moment or anything like this, which
Mm.
may also need to be had at some stage, but it's just as
Yeah.
clear as I feel at my best when I'm consistent with this.
Yeah.
Can you help me make this a part of our routine?
Yeah.
Things like
Absolutely.
we're on the same team.
Yeah,
It's like
absolutely. And I'm lucky that I guess that Anthony had felt that for himself, and he knew the benefit of, giving himself that time and space, that when it came to the point that I was feeling ready to actually do more of the
yeah,
stuff,
yeah,
he was so supportive and, pushing me for whatever I needed to make that happen.
love it.
So yeah, having those chats about, where you're at and how can I help you make sure that you get those things. And it's definitely a juggle, and it can get tricky,
Yeah,
especially when, you start getting to the point of really big things happening.
yeah,
Because then you want to do the event, but then you're tired afterwards. So then who looks after the kid?
yeah, for sure. But it's like that clarity. I mean, I'd say that that's been a common theme from your answers today. It's just being really crystal clear on the vision and the why, but
Yeah.
also then on the, okay, how's this actually going to get done?
Yeah. Yeah. You got to put some plans in place to make it work.
For sure. Cara, I'm well aware I've kept you for a while, so I will wrap things up there. But thank you very much for coming on.
Then.
I'm sure that, I mean, a lot of the people in the gym in our community will be really interested to learn, I guess, the how and the why, and a little bit more of the tactical stuff that's led to such big changes, but also interested to learn about the challenges you've faced as well, because, it's not like you walk into the gym and it's like, oh, how you going? Yeah, good. Just come back
Yeah.
from chronic fatigue, like it's not a,
You
it's
know.
probably something, yeah, that a lot of people will be really shocked to learn.
Yes.
So thank you very much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you. That was actually really fun.
Awesome. Might have to have you back on another time.
He'll give you an update on the running and where that gets to.
Well, yeah, the half marathon, that would be great.
Yes. Niggle management life.
Not quite. That's a drainer. We don't hear about only the good times we're
Yes,
interested in on the
just
simple
the
life.
good times.
Just the
No,
good
it's
times.
important. We gotta share those things too. When you have a bunch of athletes soon in your, care.
Already do. You talk
Yeah.
about
Yeah,
the
you've,
mums and
when you've
dads of
got a bunch of
Fairfield. They're killing it.
athletes. We're gonna have to start talking about, these things.
Glucose gels.
Glucose gels. Yeah. How to
All right.
hydrate.
All right. I'm going to hold it there.